Then my mother asked her, "Is Henry as good in bed as my son?" Furious, I plotted the ultimate revenge. Some betrayals hit you like a thunderstorm, loud, chaotic, and destructive. Others creep in silently, slowly eroding the foundations of trust until there's nothing left. What I discovered that day at my parents' house was a betrayal so brazen, so vile, it left me breathless. And it wasn't just the act itself. It was the sheer audacity of it happening under the roof of the people who raised me. But the moment my mother dropped that bombshell question, I knew this wasn't just about pain. This was war. Sophia was the kind of woman who could captivate a room with nothing more than a smile. She had that rare combination of elegance and charisma that made people gravitate toward her. When we met at a luxury hospitality expo in Barcelona, it was as if the universe had conspired to bring us together. I was there presenting innovations in boutique hotel management, and she was dazzling the crowd with her marketing expertise for a global resort chain. Our first conversation was electric. She laughed at my jokes, her blue eyes sparkling with genuine interest. I found myself opening up to her in a way I hadn't with anyone before. By the end of the evening, we had exchanged numbers, and within weeks, we were inseparable. Sophia's charm wasn't limited to me. My parents adored her, especially my mother, who often called her the daughter I never had. Friends admired her wit and confidence, and colleagues respected her sharp mind. Together, we were the perfect couple, at least that's what everyone believed. Our marriage started like a dream. Weekend getaways in Tuscany, elegant dinners in London, and candlelit nights in our cozy flat in Vienna. We seemed untouchable, our love fortified by shared ambitions and mutual respect. But as our careers flourished, cracks began to form. My role as a regional director kept me on the road more than I wanted, while Sophia's relentless schedule left her exhausted and irritable. The woman who once shared everything with me, her dreams, her fears, her joys, became guarded and distant. At first, I told myself it was the stress of our demanding jobs, but as the months turned into years, her behavior became harder to ignore. There were the late-night phone calls she'd take in the kitchen, speaking in hushed tones, the cryptic smiles when she glanced at her phone. And then there were the business trips that seemed to stretch longer and longer. Deep down, I wanted to trust her, but there's a fine line between trust and denial, and I was about to cross it. That Saturday morning started like any other. The sun streamed through the windows as I sipped my coffee, mentally preparing for a day of fixing the backyard fence. But when I couldn't find the right wrench in the garage, I decided to head to my parents' house. My father had a fully stocked workshop, and I knew he'd have what I needed. When I arrived, their car wasn't in the driveway. I let myself in, the familiar scent of lavender air freshener greeting me. The house was quiet, save for the faint murmur of voices coming from the basement. At first, I thought it was the radio, but as I moved closer, the voices became clearer, too clear. One of them was Sophia's. My heart raced as I crept down the stairs, my blood boiling with each passing second. "I told you this was risky," Sophia's voice whispered, tinged with nervous laughter. "Oh, come on," a man replied, his tone light and teasing. "Your in-laws aren't here. What's the worst that could happen?" I felt a surge of anger, so intense it nearly knocked the breath out of me. Peeking around the corner, I saw them, Sophia and a tall man I didn't recognize, standing close, their faces inches apart. I clenched my fists. Every muscle in my body screamed for me to storm in and confront them, but something held me back, a flicker of fear, perhaps, or the need to gather more evidence. Quietly, I retreated back upstairs, my mind racing with questions and suspicions. Just as I reached the front door, it swung open, and my parents walked in, their arms laden with grocery bags. "David," my mother exclaimed, surprised to see me, "what are you doing here?" Before I could respond, Sophia appeared at the top of the stairs, her face pale as she spotted me. She hesitated for a moment before descending, her steps slow and cautious. The man, Henry, I would later learn, lingered behind her, his expression a mix of guilt and defiance. "What's going on?" my mother asked, her sharp eyes darting between us. Sophia opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Her hesitation was all my mother needed. She turned to Sophia, her gaze icy. "Who is this?" "He's just a colleague," Sophia stammered, her voice unconvincing. My mother's lips curled into a humorous smile. "A colleague? Interesting. Tell me, Sophia, is Henry as good in bed as my son?" The room fell silent. The weight of her words crushed the air around us. Henry took a step back, muttering something about needing to leave, and bolted for the door. Sophia stood frozen, her face a mask of humiliation and panic. I expected her to deny it, to offer some feeble excuse, but she didn't. Instead, she turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "David, I can explain." "No," I said, my voice cold and steady. "You can't." My mother crossed her arms, her expression one of disgust and disappointment. "You have some nerve, Sophia, bringing your lover into our home, betraying my son under our roof." Sophia looked at me, her eyes pleading, but I was done. Without another word, I walked out the door, leaving her to face the consequences of her actions. I left my parents' house that day with a whirlwind of emotions, rage, betrayal, and heartbreak. But buried beneath the storm was a cold, calculating resolve. Sophia thought she could humiliate me, thought she could get away with desecrating everything we had built together. She was wrong. For days, I kept my distance. I needed to think, to plan. Confronting her in anger would only give her the upper hand, and I refused to let that happen. Instead, I focused on control of myself, of the narrative, and most importantly, of her downfall. The first step was gathering evidence. I scoured our shared digital footprint, messages, emails, and photos. Sophia wasn't careful, and the traces of her affair with Henry were easy to find. A hidden folder on her laptop contained pictures of the two of them at romantic dinners, text messages brimming with affection, and even plans for an upcoming weekend getaway. But that wasn't enough. I needed to ensure she couldn't deny or manipulate the truth, so I hired a private investigator. Within days, I had everything I needed: photos of them meeting at a hotel, records of their rendezvous, and even a recording of a phone call where she confessed her feelings for him. With the evidence in hand, I began dismantling her life piece by piece. I froze our joint bank accounts, ensuring she couldn't access the funds she had so carelessly spent. I contacted a divorce lawyer, setting the stage for a clean but ruthless separation. Finally, I arranged for the ultimate confrontation, one she wouldn't see coming. It was a Friday evening when everything came to a head. Sophia believed I was away for a business trip, giving her the perfect opportunity to entertain Henry. But I wasn't in another city. I was just a few blocks away, waiting for the right moment. Around 7 p.m., I watched from my car as Henry's sleek black sedan pulled into the driveway of our home. He got out, dressed sharply in a tailored suit, and walked up to the front door. My stomach churned, but I stayed focused. This was part of the plan. An hour later, I let myself into the house, moving quietly through the foyer. Voices drifted from the living room. Sophia's laugh, light and carefree, mingled with Henry's deep baritone. My heart pounded as I approached, but my resolve was unshakable. I stepped into the room, suitcase in hand. "Enjoying yourselves?" I asked, my voice cold and steady. Sophia's head snapped toward me, her face draining of color. Henry froze, his glass of wine halfway to his lips. "David," she stammered, scrambling to her feet. "What are you doing here?" I ignored her, my eyes locking on Henry. "You must be Henry," I said, my tone icy. "I've heard so much about you." Henry stood, his expression shifting from shock to unease. "I think I should go," he muttered, glancing at Sophia. "No," I said sharply, blocking his path. "You're staying. You're both going to hear what I have to say." I set the suitcase down and opened it, pulling out a stack of papers and a small USB drive. "This," I said, holding up the drive, "contains everything. Pictures, messages, call logs, all the evidence of your little affair. I've sent copies to my lawyer and a few mutual friends, just in case you try to deny it." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "David, please don't," I snapped. "You don't get to beg. You don't get to play the victim." I turned to Henry. "And you stay the hell out of my life. If I see you again, I won't be this calm. Henry muttered an apology and fled, leaving Sophia standing there, her composure crumbling. Sophia thought the confrontation was the end of it, but it was only the beginning. Over the next few weeks, her carefully curated world fell apart. The evidence I provided to my lawyer ensured a swift divorce. The settlement was brutal for her. I retained our home, most of our savings, and the support of our social circle. Sophia, on the other hand, was left with a tarnished reputation and a dwindling bank account. But I wasn't done. Through the pain, I discovered that Henry was married with a wife and 2 young children. I sent an anonymous package to his wife, containing the same evidence I had shown Sophia. It wasn't about revenge for me. It was about justice. Henry's wife filed for divorce, and his career took a nosedive as word of the affair spread. Sophia's name was dragged through the mud, and the glamorous life she had once flaunted was reduced to ashes. For me, the ultimate revenge wasn't just about punishing her. It was about reclaiming my life. Months later, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, the city lights stretching out before me. The air was crisp and clean, a stark contrast to the suffocating weight of the past. I had rebuilt myself, piece by piece. Therapy helped me confront the pain, and reconnecting with old friends reminded me of the support I had overlooked. I was no longer the man who had been betrayed. I was stronger, wiser, and free. As I sipped my coffee, a sense of peace settled over me. The scars of Sophia's betrayal would always be there, but they no longer defined me. Sometimes, the worst betrayals become the greatest turning points. Sophia's lies had shattered my world, but from the ruins, I had built something unbreakable, a life of truth, resilience, and freedom. And as the first rays of sunlight pierced the horizon, I whispered to myself, from the ashes of their deceit, I rose stronger than ever. Betrayal doesn't destroy you, it refines you.